Alright, so hello everyone and welcome back to Matchup Monday. Yeah, I know I'm late. Uh, but yeah, this time, as you guys voted, we are looking at the Sun Wukong versus Luke Cage matchup. Definitely a really relevant one right now in the meta of two pretty unique fighters with their mechanics. Um, Before we start, we chose Navy Pier, not Navy Pier, Helicarrier, my lord, as the map. Um, there are two different reasons for this. Um, for one, we assumed that items in this matchup could be a cool idea because, of course, Luke has Trash Talk and Wukong doesn't have cancels. Plus, it makes it may be a bit easier for Luke to trigger Still Standing. On the other hand, of course, Wukong has a bit more item control because of his clones, and because Luke will usually be approaching, so we thought that they could bring in a cool balance. Plus, the map itself, it has many cool little corners where either Wukong or Luke can hide their sidekicks or themselves. Plus, it is a move 4 center, so Luke's atrocious boost values don't mess with him so much, as they usually tend to do sometimes in this matchup. But they still have good ways to play around Misty with forced adjacency or whatever. So yeah, that about the map. And before we actually get into the matchup itself, why don't we swap over to Walpole and look at some key interactions? Okay, so first let's take a look at which cards from Wukong's deck can damage Luke. Because, as we know, Luke takes 2 less combat damage. That means even if he doesn't defend, he basically defends for a blank 2. And Wukong doesn't actually have many ways to deal him damage. First of all, of course, Ox Form. Well, Ox Form is a printed 7. If Luke doesn't defend, it's still 5 damage. On the other side, if he does defend, since Luke's defenses are mostly force, if he can boost, it won't probably be as much. So, of course, the Wukong is always a bit about the mind game of Ox or not Ox, especially in this one, because he only has 3 cards that actually damage Luke, so Luke might be incentivized to actually take an attack at some point, just because there's a high possibility of it not actually dealing damage. Second one that can do something is Taunting Laughter. As a 3 print, of course, it would deal 1 damage, although the immediately effect in this case, ignoring Luke's value, of course, that does not include his ability. So if he blocks with maybe a Power Man, which is basically a 4 value block, with his ability, but just a print 2, this only would ignore the print 2 values. So basically what Luke is always deciding with this is he discards 1 or takes 1 damage, which can be like reasonable to take the 1, especially because discarding a card sometimes can be really bad, but of course might still be important because Luke only has 13 health, no way of healing, so he has to play around that very carefully, and even 1 damage too much can be crucial. And then lastly, we have Wily Fighting, which is also a print 3, which Wukong could use on attack. If he does and Luke doesn't block with a Trash Talk or a Power Man, or Skelactanium. So basically, if Luke doesn't block at all or with regroup, it also deals 1 after combat to adjacent fighters, which is of course good because all the damage is nothing that Luke's ability can prevent. So basically, if Luke doesn't defend against this, it acts like a force to 2 damage. That's definitely a trait that you want to take. On the other side, of course, it could also work on defense. But, as we know from Luke's deck, all of his attack values are basically 4s or higher, or like 3s that he can boost. So, if you're defending a clone with this, the clone is most likely to die, and if the clone is already dead, um, there is nothing that he's adjacent to, so he won't deal any after combat damage to adjacent fighters because there's no one adjacent to him because he's dead. On the other side, if Luke ever gets the chance to attack Wukong himself, if you still have the health to spare, Wily might be one of your best blocks because you guarantee that 1 damage to go through because Luke doesn't have any offensive cancels or movement effects to prevent this or anything else. So If you get all three of these triggered, that's already 3 health from Luke down, so he's only at 10. And from there on, your Auxes might actually be able to do some work. Because if you return them with 72 transformations, of course, you can have 5 of them. And since Luke basically only has 5 4-value blocks, there is a high chance that at least one of them will go through undefended or into a skin like Titanium. So that might be your game plan as Wukong, to just go for many Auxes, pressure his defenses, and then get him. So these are your three main ways of dealing damage. Of course, you also have the 4-value attack from Jingabong if Luke defends the first one, but that's not too likely against Luke himself, because, as said, he's very likely to take some attacks. So I wouldn't consider it a reliable damage source, but in the case that you get it, it's still really good. Okay, so now that we covered Wukong's offensive potential, basically, we can talk about Luke's main way to actually win this game. Because Wukong, as we all know, has his whole clone wall where he can hide behind, so it's not something that it's not like a reliable way for Luke to just always go in there and smack Wukong, because a smart Wukong player will position in a way that you can't really get to him. So Luke's main way, of course, is surviving and then fatigue. But how does he win against a fighter like Wukong, who has an insane value game with so many Ox forms that are 2-for-1 trades, potentially Jingo Bongs, which are 2-for-1 trades, Taunting Laughters that are 2-for-1 trades, Tortoise forms that are 2-for-1 trades? Yeah, still standing. Still standing, of course, is a 4-value attack that both Luke and Misty can use, and if he wins the combat, he can shuffle 2 cards back from the discard pile. Of course, the first still standing will shuffle back any 2 cards, but then from the second on it gets important, because you can shuffle the first still standing that you already used and a different card, so you can basically create an infinite loop. Now, of course, it's reliant on winning combat with a 4-value attack, which is not that reliable, but let's see what actually Wukong has to stop that. Of course, he has Golden Chainmail. Golden Chainmail is one of his 4 ultimate defenses that just basically mean he doesn't take damage. Um, in this matchup, it actually just means he doesn't take damage. And since all of Wukong's cards are any's, because he summons clones of himself, also the clones can use it, just like the other cards. So Luke doesn't have a safe way of actually ignoring this, and maybe like if you're playing against any other fighter that has a high value defense, it might only be for the hero. With this, also the clones can use it, so he can't just farm still standing of the clones, which is definitely important. So that's 2 ways to negate still standing. Then, of course, bewilderment. Prevent all combat damage means no damage is dealt to the defender, which means the defender wins combat. So also prevents still standing, and again, any, so that's 4 cards. And then potentially Tortoise Form. Of course, Tortoise Form is a 5, so you would think it might work against still standing, but the opponent can boost. So if Luke boosts for a 2-value boost, which might be one of his Misty cards if Misty is already dead, or maybe anything else, he can get still standing's value up to a 6, in which case it wins. And since he trades 1 card for boosting to get 2 cards back shuffled, it's definitely a trade that he's happy to take most of the time. Even if he has to boost with the second still standing, because he can just recur it afterwards, because the boost is during combat and the shuffling after. So potentially another 2 ways to stop it, but definitely not reliable. So Wukong's main goal, of course, is to pressure Luke's hand size, to pressure him with Auxes and actually get good damage in, because Luke only has a certain amount of defenses, which we'll talk about next. But then also he has to be very wary about his own defenses, because of course, if he uses all of his 4 ultimate defenses too early and still standing is still in play, Luke is just free to do whatever he wants. He can just sit back, chill, play a slow game, and then just exhaust you. So Wukong at the start probably will be a bit more on the defensive side, just because, well, he can hide behind his clone walls, but he will definitely have to resort to a more aggressive game throughout the mid to late game, just to prevent Luke from actually going in for good still standings and pressuring Wukong's defenses himself. Now, you might be thinking, well, Karma, you forgot something. Doesn't Wukong have another way to stop still standing? Kinda. Because Fiery Eyes, let's see, exists. With this card, if the first still standing has already been played, so it is in discard pile, Wukong can play this when he suspects that Luke has the second one in hand, put it on the bottom of his deck, and then you both draw one card. Since Luke has no actual way to shuffle his deck except for still standing itself, if you manage to catch the second one and put it on the bottom of his deck, you know that it's not coming anyway soon. So you know it's the last card in deck, so Luke will have to maneuver a lot, even if he is able to shuffle again, and you're almost certain about when it is coming, because at that point, when Luke reaches the bottom of his deck, he probably only has 7 cards max in hand, so maybe there will be like 4 attacks out of those, so you have a 1 in 4 chance of catching it, and each time that you don't catch it, Luke also doesn't shuffle back any new cards, so he will take another 2 damage on a maneuver. So this is basically the prime scenario for Wukong, which also, of course, is a reason for Luke to probably just use Still Standing ASAP. Because if he takes too much time and keeps it in his hand, well, Wukong has a higher chance of actually getting Fiery Eyes, playing it, and then catching Still Standing and putting it on bottom. And, I mean, there's a more likely chance to just throw the Still Standing out whenever you attack, um, if you have it, because Wukong doesn't actually know when it's coming, and if you attack every turn, well, it just becomes a guessing game. Then just waiting until you know that there is no ultimate defense left to stop it, which also gives Wukong the time to draw Fiery Eyes and then put it on the bottom. So Wukong probably wants to use one of these pretty early once the first Still Standing is out, just to get a check on the hand if Still Standing is already there, and like after a few maneuvers, once you get into like maybe the last 5 cards in deck, you probably want to use it again. And Luke, of course, once Still Standing is there, just use it. Alright, and now, just like said, let's take a look at Luke's defensive capabilities. Because, of course, if Wukong is pressuring a lot, trying to force his defenses up with Oxes, maybe getting a few Jingabunks in, or Infinite Strikes, a card that we haven't talked about yet, which might be useful, even though it wouldn't deal damage to Luke. If Luke uses a defense against it, well, you gain an action, so that sounds quite nice to bait out defenses. But, of course, Luke is a tank. The few defenses that he has are insanely good. Most notably, these 2 cards. First of all, he has Power Man, which is a 2 copy. Since he has the +2 defense bonus, basically, it is almost like a 4 value defense. And then he will deal 1 damage to the opposing fighter. He can also move them 3 spaces and maybe get some extra value by moving them through more opposing fighters, which won't probably happen that often with good positioning, but it might be able to proc sometime. So that, of course, deals 1 damage to the opposing fighter. So Infinite Strikes gaining the action, yeah, it still happens, sure, but there probably won't be another attack coming afterwards instantly. If you play it against Ox, it's probably best case scenario because you still deal 1 damage to Wukong or the clone, killing it, and you still have a 4 value block against Ox that you can boost. So since you have 3 boosts, that might result in not taking damage from an Ox, which definitely is probably worth it. And then the good thing against Ryu, well, technically you would think like, oh damn, shit, I defended against Ryu. But with Power Man, it's actually not that bad because you still do 1 damage to the clone that played it, if it is played by a clone, in which case the clone dies, in which case a dead fighter cannot attack. So Power Man is probably the best block you can always get against the clones because Ryu doesn't actually trigger. You clear off the clone no matter what they attacked with, and it just feels good. On the other hand, if Wukong, of course, played Ryu himself, well, Wukong won't die, so probably from the 1 damage, so the second one will still be coming, in which case you feel really bad. But other than that, since Wukong probably won't endanger himself too often, Power Man is probably one of your, if not your safest defense. And then, on the other side, We have Trash Talk, which is basically a 4-value cancel that also ends the turn if you win combat. So being a 4-value cancel, it of course cancels Ryu, it cancels Infinite Strikes, it cancels Taunting Laughter, it cancels Wily, it cancels basically everything and wins combat against basically everything. So, except Ox. Ox, of course, is a Prince 7, so yeah, it could end the turn still, Trash Talk being, if you boost with 3, in which case it would still be a 7-value block. So, you win combat and end the turn, but outside of Ox, you basically always win. Except, well, nothing except there is no way you lose. um, so yeah, Trash Talk just ends the turn, basically always. So Wukong has to think about that at some point, maybe if he wants to attack first action, then maneuver away. He has to think about Trash Talk and that he maybe not be able to attack again or maneuver second action. So there are some mind games to be played, but other than that, usually as Wukong, Luke either defends for a 4 that shuts down any of my shenanigans, except if I play Dogs, or he doesn't play anything, in which case only the few cards that we discussed at the start actually do something. Which creates an interesting kind of mind game, but again, these are the only 5 big guaranteed defenses that Luke has to actually get some um, good defense in and prevent a lot of damage and Wukong's effects. So if you just attack a lot, there might be the chance to just bait them all um, at some time. So yeah, again, Wukong probably wants to go aggressive. And then lastly, I want to take a look at how important Misty is in this matchup. Misty Knight, of course, is Luke's sidekick with 6 health, and the important thing, she is ranged. And as you might know, having a ranged fighter against Wukong changes almost everything. Because it means that you don't always have to approach and punch through his clone wall, since ranged fighters, of course, can attack everything in their zone. If Wukong, like, isn't in any really small zone where he can shut the spaces off and then still block something, you'll get some good hits into him with Misty because she can attack from range. And what can she attack with? Well, a lot. She has commandings. It's 5-value attacks. Wukong basically only defends for 3 or 2, except if he uses like one of the before mentioned ultimate defenses or tortoise one, in which case you can still boost. So he either has to spend one of his ultimate defenses or he takes damage, which is really, really good for you. On the other hand, Misty can attack with still standing from ranged, which also adds an extra mind game because you can't just take attacks on the clones. Misty might just at some point go and attack a clone from ranged, and Wukong might be thinking, well, is this still standing now? It's definitely something that he has to consider, because Misty can throw this at any point, so really good to be able to trigger this from ranged. And then, technically, she could also go for a good old 6-value attack with Daughter of the Dragon, which, again, if not played against an ultimate defense, well, it will deal damage. So that's very good again. If we look from the other side, what Wukong actually has to work with when trying to defeat her, well, she can again play a 6-value block, because Wukong will always attack from adjacency, so this will always be a 6, which is of course primarily perfect against Ox, because in the case that you play this into an Ox, Misty only takes 1 and you probably don't even have to boost, which is best case scenario. On the other hand, this is where Jingabong might be really effective, because Misty only has a few cards to block with, and she of course doesn't have the +2 bonus, so she's not that likely to take attacks, which means Ryu might be even more effective against her and mostly used against her, because if you play this into a Ryu, you of course feel really sad because you wasted your 6-value defense and now there's a 4-value attack coming at you again, which feels really bad. On the other hand, she could, of course, play something like Got My Back, which is probably the safest block overall, if you want to save some health on Misty, because she can swap with Luke, and Luke, of course, will get the +2 on this card, so basically he will defend for 3 in that case, so against Ox he can still boost, maybe take 2, which doesn't feel great, but it's fine. And then if against Ryu, yeah, it still feels bad because a block got out, but then maybe you can block with something like a Power Man second and still don't take damage, and it's fine. Other than that, Misty has Trash Talk, which kind of creates that mind game. You want to play Trash Talk against Ryu because it, of course, ends the turn and cancels the effect, whereas you want to play Daughter of the Dragon against Ox, and not the other way around, which would be a disaster. So, yeah, Misty definitely has a good variety of blocks, just not that high of a quantity of actually good ones. So, if again Wukong can get some good aggression against her, he might be able to get her off quite quickly, and I think that's also the main turning point of the game, because once Misty dies, Luke will always have to punch through the clone wall, so he basically only relies on still standing from there on, because he won't ever get to Wukong himself to deal damage. So yeah, I think the turning point of the game where everything relies on still standing and the recursion is once Misty dies. Before that, you have a reasonable chance to actually get some damage onto Wukong himself, while still getting maybe one or two shuffles in. But before that, your main objective is probably to deal as much damage to Wukong himself as possible to make his clone summoning later a bit harder. And then once Misty is dead, it all becomes the still standing game that we maybe love, maybe hate from Luke. And yeah, that should be it from the most key interactions. Um, you might have noticed that I left out Phoenix form just because I think it's not that important in this matchup, to be honest. It's still 3 healing for Wukong, don't get me wrong, it's definitely really good, but he doesn't necessarily need it to win, as like within other matchups where he can maybe cycle it as passes. That's usually not his win condition here. Um, so yeah, I left it out because of that, but of course it's still a really important card. I just didn't want to cover the whole decks the whole time because that would take a lot of time. Um, so yeah, actually we played 2 games this time. So we will cover one from the Wukong side, one from the Luke side, because they went pretty fast, and it's such an interesting matchup, and we felt like it's probably the better way to show one game from both sides each time, because on the other hand, like last time with um, our matchup, yeah, we always covered one side pretty well, like in the first one with Tomoe, but then didn't got to see the Yen part of it, or with at Tesla, we also like didn't get everything, or like from the sisters with their matching symbols. We didn't actually get to see what they always had, so we felt like it would be a better idea to always play one game as each character. So in the first one, I will be playing as Wukong going first. In the second one, I'll be playing as Luke going first. So both characters went first once, which felt fair, and you see the game from both characters as well. So first of all, let's talk about starting hands, and maybe also let's talk about items on this map. Um, Helicarrier, of course, is a Marvel map, so you have item tokens. The +2 and +1 tokens for combat are most likely not that important for both characters, because Luke usually defends with Trash Talk and something that just shuts it off anyways, and if Luke attacks against Wukong himself with a +2 token, he can just use one of his ultimate defenses and is still fine. I think the scheme tokens are way more important. We have the wonderful turret on the bottom left, which deals 2 damage to any fighter in your zone, which could be really handy against Luke, dealing the 2 auto damage. Then we have the rocket jetpack on the top, which of course places your fighter in any space. That might be good for Luke to get behind Wukong's clone lines. And then, well, the MP pulse, discarding 2 cards from both players' hands, is not that useful in this one. It might get played as a pass. I mean, maybe if we get to that point. But yeah, other than that, I don't think the tokens are that important here. Um, but yeah, I decide to keep my hand. I see an Ox, I see a Ryu. I don't need that many high value defenses at the start because I'm going first. I'll get a clone early. And I just want to be pressuring early to maybe get some early damage onto Luke or even kill Misty depending on positioning. Luke decides to mulligan. We briefly saw his hand there, but I think I'll cover the Luke mulligan part a bit more once I get to the Luke game where I played as Luke. I think that's more reasonable, and I'll focus on the Wukong side for now. So He places Misty on the bottom, definitely making it harder for me to reach. Makes sense. I'll start by summoning a clone, of course, at the start of my turn, taking 1 damage. Um, you don't want to forget that, because if you maneuver or do any first action, um, and then remember, oh shit, I wanted to summon a clone, if we're playing by the rules, you're not allowed to. So don't forget it whenever you play Wukong. It's the same with Medusa, because the ping is optional. So don't forget it, please. Um, I decide to go for a maneuver. And another maneuver, that is. Wukong will go on the jetpack, which means I can always like push him to safety, use a scheme. Whereas my clone, I'm thinking about moving to the wonderful yellow and brown spot to the right, because that is actually the center of this map with move 4. So I'll be able to reach easier. However, I do have 2 Sly Monkeys in hand, which are boost 3s, which I can throw away quite easily. So it's probably not that important, but it also would lock off Luke from the middle of the board. But I do stay in here because if you notice, that spot is actually forcing adjacency. Whenever Misty wants to attack my clone there, um, for some reason, I can definitely guarantee that she will be adjacent, so I'll be able to double attack her, so Luke can't easily clear my clone. Plus, it is move 3 away from Luke himself, so he will have to boost to get to me. So yeah, I'm just making it harder for him to get that clone out of the way, because that's also a strategy for Luke, just going for the clones early, so that always only 1 is on the board, and then actually being able to reach Wukong. So I'm just making it harder for him there. Summoning a clone again, and whoo, we see another Ox. Boys, this is interesting. So for me, of course, the clone in the yellow center there is able to reach both Luke and Misty. Misty, of course, is on a +2 token, so it might be harder to kill her there if she has a not still standing, a trash talk. Although I have Orcs in hand. But at the same time, if Misty defends with +2, I could also just go for Luke himself, which there was this wonderful pause sign on the bottom. I'm sorry for that. Which of course, well, it would give me some early damage, which might be nice. Because right now where I'm at the top, Misty's ranged stuff is not that important. So I do decide to attack Luke, and it takes, ouch, 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 ouch. Um, yeah, best outcome for me, 5 damage it is. And here I already have my win condition, basically just going for max amount of Oxes. Luke decides to attack the clone back. I defend with Tortoise form just because I want to stay around. Of course, I still have the Ox in hand and I don't want to boost as much to get to him. Now he's attacking again, and well, I only have 2s on defense, and basically all of Luke's attacks will win against that. So yeah, there's no point in defending again. So yeah, at least he survived 1 hit there. And now Luke is only boost 1 away. So it doesn't actually impact the game that much, but yeah. Start of turn, I summon a clone, as always with Wukong. And now I'm thinking about boosting Rio, because Rio against Luke at this point is not that great. But I still keep it just for potential mind games against Misty later. Boost with Taunting Laughter, which, as covered before, is not that great. Attack Luke, and oh, it's only a regroup. It's not even for 4 value block. He boosts with Got My Back from Misty, so 5 value regroup against Orcs. 2 damage again, really good for me. This game started perfect. Like, holy. That's 7 damage in the first 2 combat interactions. That's half of Luke's health gone. But, of course, I already used my 2 Oxes, and now I'm at the mercy and actually drawing my 72 transformations. And from now on, Luke can quite confidently, like, take stuff. I do take an attack on the clone because I do have only 3 value blocks max, and oh, it's still standing. So Luke instantly gets to recur 2 cards, which is not great for me. It's of course not that important yet, because from now on the mind games begins, but it's of course good for him because the first one is out already, and now I'll have to always worry about another one coming. So the earlier the first still standing is gone, the more time he has to proc the second one, baiting up my defense or anything else. So it's definitely really good for him. I do decide to summon another clone, and my thought right now is, well, I could go for a Fiery Ice to look at his hand, but at the same time, why don't I just try to pressure even more? Yeah, Luke is likely to take, but I do have the +1 token there, which means if it's something like Wily, if Luke takes, Wily is a 4 with dealing 1 after combat, that's 3 damage. And I don't think he can actually afford that risk. So my thought process, since he didn't seem to have the best defenses yet, I decided to go for the Ryu play because, well, if he has Trash Talk, well, the attack doesn't matter, no matter what I throw. If he has Power Man, the attack basically doesn't matter, no matter what I throw. So Ryu actually, for the case that it is anything else, and he blocks, will be almost perfect because, well, second defense will have to come out, and it will be good for me. Um, and ooh. Well, skin like titanium, 2 value blocks, so no damage is dealt back, but, well, he defended, so I do have the second attack from Ryu coming, and he has to take. Damn, every interaction is going my way, boys. He now attacks the clone. Well, no reason for me to defend it. Oh boy. What is this game, boys? What is this game? We have another still standing, so if Luke manages to find his good defenses, which definitely can happen. Like 4 health on Luke is way more than you think. If he finds his good blocks and finds 3 boosts, I don't have the damage to kill him with Oxys, so he might survive. Plus, he also still has Misty to put in the way. It's definitely a good situation for me for a start, but on the other side, it can still go on the other way around. He maneuvers second action, of course, bringing Luke a bit to safety. Although he ends next to the +2 token, which might be interesting, but looking at my hand right now, not that much. If I had any of my red attacks right now, I probably could have used the jetpack to port next to him and then attack with +2. But it seems like a risky play just because I would have to attack with something like Wily or Slime Monkey, which isn't the best, and then well, I don't have the best defenses either. So yeah, I just decided to go for the normal clone summoning and maneuver, and just maneuver again because I can chill at this point. I primarily want to use my 72 transformations that I used, that I drew here on defense, because on defense it's guaranteed to trigger. Because if I attack Luke or Misty with it, he could trash talk, and that's 1 less Ox that I get. So yeah, not great for me. He boosts with a pushback there after the maneuver to get the clone done with the laser turret with the 2 damage, which, well, it's not best value, but I guess it can work as a pass. Only thing that I don't like about this one for him is that he used a 3 boost, which might be valuable later to boost against Oxus, but yeah. Now, I don't really want to lose too much value, and I have to deal with Misty at some point, so I attack her with Infinite Strikes. It's just the best thing I have. He trash talks, so yeah, not much I can do about it. Now he goes for a counterattack. I of course go for 72 to get the guaranteed Ox back. It's commanding, so clone still dies, which is a bit unfortunate, but I guess that was to be expected. Um, and Luke maneuvers, claiming both +2 tokens now, or actually reconsidering and getting Misty back to be a bit of a um, like more of a meat shield for Luke, being able to attack next time. I go for a clone summoning. As always, this part will be pretty repetitive, as always in Wukong games. Maneuver again, draw into another 72, which is of course perfect for me because, well, I'll probably attack with Ox right now. Boost for Slime Monkey to reach Luke, and then I can, on the counter attack, just block with 72 again, get another Ox back. Luke is thinking about using the +2 defense. I definitely think it's worth it. And yeah, on regroup, he can now boost as well. So he has a 7 value regroup block, winning against Ox form. That's only something you get with Luke. 7 value regroup on defense. Let's go. That wins the combat against Ox. Drawing 2. It's insane. But I really like that interaction. Um, and it still forced out 2 cards, so yeah. And it's a defense gun. Again, he attacks. Bam. I get another Ox back. Perfect. Now I have 2 left. And, well, Luke is still at 4 health, so like I said, he won't just die from that. I mean, I still have my 3 Wilies on defense if he ever gets to attack Wukong, but as I said, Misty is also still around, so yeah. I go for another wonderful clone summoning, and now decide to go for the jetpack onto Luke himself, because, well, I feel like I have to keep under pressure, and right now, I also still have the Wily, so yeah. Ox into his skin like titanium it is, so if he doesn't boost, he dies. He does boost for 2, so he has a 4 value defense. We both take 3 damage, and now he is in lethal range. Whenever he attacks me now, if I defend with Wily, he's dead. Of course, he can't just wait for it, because if he waits, well, I'm more likely to get a Wily. So yeah, there's no point for him even trying to wait it out. I think it's the correct play for him to just go for it right now. Um, However, I do have Wily, so yeah. That will be it. 1 damage after combat will finish off Luke. This was an insane game. Like, it was really fast, but at the same time, this was how optimal game plan looks for Wukong. Like, I got basically 4 Oxes early. I got 1 Jingabong triggered. It was basically perfect scenario for me. So yeah. That being said, that is how it optimally goes for the Wukong side. Let's take a look at Luke. Alright, let's get a look at the Luke side of things. Of course, that first one, ah, damn, it went horrible for him. Definitely not great. So poor guy, poor guy, poor guy. As you see, we recorded a lot of games there. Because many were just not that great. And went in a similar way where one character just had perfect draw, the other one had shit draw, and yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of a Luke thing because Luke's deck, of course, is so polarized with having so many reds and so many blues, so he can get stuck with one of them. Um, but at the same time, we wanted to give you like a normal balance-ish game from these two. So yeah, let's talk about opening hands again. Oh, before that, token thingies. Well, it's not that important. We have the damage one on top this time, so I guess I don't want to enter that as Luke to not get zapped for 2 damage. And then jetpack in the middle, which isn't that important usually. But yeah. Opening hands, I see a early still standing, really good. I see a pushback, good for baiting out defense. And trash talk empowerment, just good defense overall. And now I also just draw into a got my back, so yeah, perfect. I really like this hand to get up some early pressure onto Luke. I maneuver with Misty, and since this map is quite small, she's able to attack Wukong without any boosts. I don't have anything big right now. If I had something like a commanding, I probably would have thrown it, because there is no really bad outcome for me. If he uses an ultimate defense, well, it's no damage, but that's 1 ultimate defense gone. And if it's not an ultimate defense, I'll do damage, but at the same time, I want to start pressuring his hand early, and maybe the movement will help me get him into some bad situations. So yeah, I just don't want to give him the room to breathe to actually go for his ox hacking and Well, I didn't expect that one. I definitely didn't expect that one. Ultimate defense gone, pushback used in basically best case scenario. Like, Couldn't have gone better. I push him to the bottom on there just so that Misty won't get attacked without boosting, because no matter where he summons the clone, he won't be able to reach a plus with a move 2, since, well, my blocks aren't that great for her right now, so I felt like it's reasonable to keep her a bit more safe there. Um, Wukong decides to claim the plus 2 there with the clone, putting Wukong at the back, so he's a bit safer from Luke himself. Um, I now go for an plus 1 attack with Misty onto Wukong, and damn! Well, that's a still standing trigger, even though it's only 1 card back. Why I did this? My hand right now, I don't have any good things to throw with Misty, other than still standing, and since he already used 1 ultimate defense at the start there, chances are that he probably doesn't have another one. So I just want to get early damage in as soon as possible. Plus, I already have still standing in this card now, so he always has to think about when I'm playing the second one from now on, which is of course good because it gives me more time. Plus, since he doesn't have the greatest of blocks, I get some good damage. So don't shy away from using something like Still Standing to only recur 1. It's the same that I often use as Daredevil with Devil of Hell's Kitchen, using it to only recur like 2 or 3 cards, because that's where the opponent doesn't really expect it. Plus, in this case, it's still a 4 value attack with a +1 token, a 5. So again, there's no really bad outcome for this. Yeah, well, Wukong doesn't summon a clone. I quite like this because um, he doesn't actually need a second one. He's a bit more worried about his health right now. Decides to attack Misty. Yeah, Ox. Well, I have the interesting question of whether to swap or not. And I do decide to go for the swap just because I feel like from how the game is going right now, Wukong doesn't have the best defenses himself, so maybe just keeping up the pressure with Misty with any attacks will be better, so I want to keep her alive. I decide not to boost just because I don't have anything good. All the blue cards are 1 boosts. The red one is also a 1 boost, so nothing great. And, well, I'll now use the jetpack to get behind Wukong so he can't run away. And I have a Daughter of the Dragon in hand, which of course is a 6 if adjacent to Wukong. Even though he's on a +2 token, I still feel like it's worth it just to go for it. And yeah, there we go. Another 2 damage it is. Of course, Slime Monkey lets him get a free clone, so it's basically he summoned a clone for 2 health instead of 1, which is a good trade for him, but yeah. Goes for an attack on Misty. Yeah, trash talked, 1 damage. So, fine for me. And now maneuvers. That spot is quite nasty for me because I can't reach him with Luke, so not good. And, well, Misty is also a bit cut off from Wukong there, and I don't have anything good to attack him with. So, yeah. I'll just go in the middle of all the clones there and attack one of them. Bam. Let's clone that. And this is also where I made a really big mistake. With 72 transformations, he brought back Ox. And you remember when I said that the EMP pulse, the scheme token that lets both players discard 2 cards, or both players have to discard 2 cards, would not be that important? Well, Wukong has a clone on that token right now. He brought back an Ox to his hand, and I only have 2 cards. See where I'm getting at? He could right now use the EMP pulse to make us both discard 2 cards, and then attack me with an undefended Ox. So I would take 5 damage, putting me down to 4. So, yeah, I didn't consider that just because I felt like, oh yeah, that is. I didn't really think about the token right there. Big mistake. But as you see, Danny also forgot it existed. Thank God. I think I definitely just would have lost the game right there if he got an undefended Ox right here. Um, so yeah. Clone attacking now, first action. I know that he also has the Ox in hand, and for me, probably Power Man is just safe option overall, so yeah. He does decide to go for the Ox, I definitely like it. I also point out the EP play there to him, because I also just noticed before. So yeah, I decided not to boost. Move the clone there to deal the other one as well, and Wukong one, and I take the 3 damage, which is still not great, of course, but in this case I also basically dealt 3 damage back to Wukong's total health, so yeah, even trade, just that my health is a bit more important than Wukong's. Now I just regroup a bit. I need more cards. Misty's still at full health, almost at full health, so I want to utilize her a bit more. Wukong summons clone, as always. Maneuvers in, thinking about boosting and actually goes for it. Fiery Eyes, I do like the choice because he probably doesn't need that right now. And he attacks Misty. I guess it could have been worse. It could have been worse. If this was a Jingabong, I would be in trouble. Although, this one, I guess it's still annoying because I, again, have to use a second card or my 6 value block is wasted. And right now, I kind of do want to keep the hero for hire, the boostable, just to have anything to attack with and get the clone out of the way to make Wukong boost next turn again. And I, of course, don't want to boost with Trash Talk, so yeah. But I do consider that the 3 health on Misty is more important than getting the clone away, so yeah. I decided to go for a maneuver. See that I draw into a pushback. Nothing that I really want to attack with, so yeah. Maneuver again it is. Again positioning in a way where the clone has the boost to reach my fighters. Um, Wukong gets another clone. Um, decides to claim center. Definitely makes sense. Wukong himself is still pretty safe there on the +2, so yeah. And I'm at low hand count, so he doesn't have to protect him that much. He also decides to go for um, the laser turret on the top, just assuring that I don't just go in there, so that he can almost zap me if I decide to attack that clone. So I will of course not decide to do that and just double maneuver, and you'll see a bit of the loop problem here. I don't have anything to attack with. I would really love to pressure Wukong, even if he's standing on a +2 there. I just want to attack him with anything. Ah, yeah. Well, can't do that if I'm at full blue cards and one Misty versatile, I guess, that I could use, but Misty is kind of still up there. Wukong heals, Phoenix Form healing for 3. Definitely delays the counter and some of my attacks. And then clone attacks. Trash Talk safe option overall. Turn gets ended, no effects, no action gain. So yeah. I now maneuver and hope to draw into some attacks, and hey, we get something. So yeah. Unga Bunga Smack Monkey. And well, ultimate defense perfect for him. Not taking any damage, but again, that's an ultimate defense gone, so that's 2 of them out of the way. Only 2 left, 2 blocks still standing. And now clone attacks with +2, and hey, we get another full cancel. Although it was on a reuse, so I guess it was a bit baited and wasted there. Maneuver, and again, I would love to attack Wukong with something big, but yeah, I guess pushback will have to do for now. And hey, good interaction. It's another ultimate defense gone. I'll move Wukong to the bottom just to keep Misty a bit more safe from him, although it doesn't really matter. And I want to get him away from the wonderful damage zap thingy maneuvers and maneuvers. So yeah, makes sense. Wukong's fully safe there. No shenanigans that I can use to get to him. So yeah, I guess I'll still have to punch through the clone wall. Now my thought process, well, he just used 3 of his ultimate defenses, so why not boost with a skill like Titanium, which is basically useless in the matchup. And Misty will attack the monkey again, and bam! 3 damage, let's go. Although, he played 72, so he might be able to get another Ox back, which he does. Definitely a good choice for him. I mean, I'm at 3 cards, so it's not that likely that I have the best defenses. And yeah. For me, of course, right now, this is tricky, because if he attacks Misty with an Ox now, that's really bad. Because I can only block with the Got My Back, in which case, if I don't swap, Misty's still dead. And if I do swap, I don't have anything good to boost with. I have Skin like Titanium, which is a 1, which doesn't do much. I have a Sweet Christmas, which is a 1 boost, which doesn't do much. So Luke would also take 3 damage, at least, and if I don't boost, 4. So even if I block with pushback, I basically take 4 damage on Luke, or Misty is dead. So there is no real point to block with pushback if it is Ox. And if it is anything else, I want to take anyways. So that is why you will see me take this attack. It's always about these decisions. Um, if you know you only have a suboptimal block in hand, which doesn't really delay the worst outcome, you can also just say, well, what is the point of even blocking in this situation? If I don't block and it is not the Ox, well, Misty just stays alive anyways, and I keep the pushback for later maybe. But yeah, I take and it is the Ox, so well, Misty would have been dead anyways, or I take 3 or 4 damage on Luke, which I wouldn't have done at this point. So yeah, taking the Ox there I think is the right play to do. And this puts me in a bad situation right now because now Misty is dead, so I'll have to punch through the clone wall to actually get to Wukong. So my big hope is to draw some still standings now, put the initiative onto him, and yeah. I go in the force adjacent spot, which doesn't do much, but it's close to center, plus I can always reach one of the clones with move 2, so that's quite good for me if I draw the still standing in the next couple of turns. So yeah. Clone goes and attacks me. For me, again, what do I have to block with? Only Skin like Titanium. If it's Ox, I could just basically not block at all, and it wouldn't do much. Um, yeah, sure, I could boost with the Got My Back, but again, I would take 3 damage in that case. Sure, the clone would die, but that's not a good trade for me. However, if I do block now, and it should be anything else, that's horrendous. Like, at this point, I only have one good block left, which is Power Man, so I definitely want to get that into an Ox. And if I take an Ox now, well, it's 5. And it's almost GG from there. If I don't take the Ox and defend, it's still not great. So I think if I um, defend right here and it turns out to be anything basically, I will just be in a losing position from there on. Because he sees that I block with something like Skin like Titanium, which says, well, not good blocks, plus I have one card left, one lower card in hand, maybe 2 if it's Ox or anything else that's 2 for 1 trade. So yeah, I will decide to take this one again. Like I said, Luke will often take stuff, and it is definitely very risky. But I felt like it's the right thing to do because if this goes my way, and it turns out to be something like a Ryu, I think I have a good shot. Um, and yeah, it is a Ryu. So hey, let's go. I always love to take Ryus. It's one of my favorite things. Um, so yeah, good for me there. Now, it always only depends on still standing, yes, no. I do decide to attack the clone maybe just to bait out a good defense, and I at least get a tortoise out, which I guess is fine. And then I do decide to attack the clone again, just to get rid of it. Wukong can't summon another one. Yeah, he takes. Commanding is not that useful for me anyways anymore, because I won't get to Wukong himself, so I might just attack the clones for passes and bait out good defenses in case of still standing. Now I draw to waste my money, which might be able to get me into some shenanigans. Wukong just double maneuvers. Definitely makes sense because he was at 2 cards in hand. I maneuver, see I draw into my Power Man. And now this is funny. I maneuver there and play Where's My Money, which of course lets me place myself next to the nearest opposing fighter. Since both clones were 1 away, I can decide, and I can attack Wukong. And hey, 3 damage! And well, I do take 1 myself from the Wily, but good trade. Wukong is now at 4 health, no Phoenix form left, so those 4 are the max that he will ever have, which is really good for me. Although, at the same point, I'm also trapped there right now if I don't draw anything to attack the clone. And yeah, well. I draw Rigu. I decided to maneuver again because, well, the clone is most likely to take, and I don't want to attack with Rigu right now, drawing two because, oh, our deck counts are starting to get low. He's at 6 right now, I'm at 7, so if I draw two Regroup there, it's not great. Wukong maneuvers, just gets into safety on top there. Definitely makes sense, and now probably second action attacks me. Oh no, he double maneuvered. My bad. Yeah, I also decided to double maneuver because, hey, attacking with regroup right now into a clone is not great because he will take. So yeah, he attacks. I decide to go for a Power Man, and it turns out to be a Ryu, so he still has two Oxes. I don't have any 4-value blocks left, but hey, at least the clone dies, I guess. He now maneuvers, doesn't decide to summon a clone, which definitely makes sense because he doesn't really need one anymore. Where he is right now, I can't reach, so there's no need for him to spend the extra health, which might come into play later. In some combat interactions, lowering lethal thresholds or whatever. Um, for him, it's interesting right now. Does he decide to boost and lock me in there again? Um, does he actually attack me there? I think if he has an Ox, it's definitely reasonable because I don't have any good blocks anymore against it. But at the same time, if he doesn't have Ox, well, he doesn't have much to actually attack me with that would deal damage. So yeah. On the other hand, I can't just freely take attacks anymore because I'm at 5 health, which means if I take an Ox, I'm dead. So I guess there is a play for him to be made to just go in. But yeah, I maneuver boost to attack the clone because hey, I only have regroup, so let's attack regroup. And I do get another tortoise out of the way, which I guess is fine. So yeah, I really wish I could have something that's still standing right here. Uh, he does the fiery eyes, hoping to get still standing out of the way, but no still standing anywhere. Yeah, if I had it, I definitely would have thrown it before here. And from here, I also have to become a bit desperate because, oh, well, there, okay, there it is. I was just about to say, well, I just have to attack every turn right now. Now, I guess he's attacking with Ox. After seeing my hand, I don't have perfect stuff, but no, it's Infinite Strikes, and, well, I draw two from the regroup because it wins combat against Infinite Strikes. Now he attacks again, and now I'm like, well, now this has to be the Ox, right? That was bait before, so I go for the Skin like Titanium. Oh no. Another Infinite Strikes, and now he attacks, and it's Ox. And I die. I guess I should have taken the risk before to take one of the attacks, but at the same time, I just drew still standing, so I just have to survive this one thing. If I survive this interaction here, this turn, I'm good. I can attack the clone, get my still standing recursion, and get something like a Power Man or Trash Talk back, and then I have defense. So if I just survive that one, I'm good. So I felt like, well, he has to have the second Infinite Strikes for me to die here. And it's just not that likely than throwing another Ox just to deal some damage because he saw my defense wasn't that great. Because I don't have much left. So yeah. It's one of those mind games. It's 50-50. Is it Ox or is it not? And I felt like, well, there's no point just thinking about it that much because it will always remain 50-50. So I just go for it thinking that it is Ox. But yeah, turned out to be the wrong call. And that were my last 5 health. So yeah, what can we say about this matchup in conclusion? It's definitely swingy, but even. Although it's one of those even matchup where it's not much about player skill that much, where as it is about just calling the right combat interactions with 50-50s. If Luke calls all the Jingo Bongs and Infinite Strikes right and doesn't have to use all of his blocks, that's great. If he calls Nox wrong, takes 5, that's bad. On the other side, if Wukong gets all of the interactions right, maybe he blocks the second still standing with ultimate defense. That's really good for him. So I would say overall, just due to consistency, I think Wukong is a bit favored in this one. Because as you saw with this game, Luke's hand can just basically play against him. That it gets only blue or only red at some point, which is definitely really bad. And Wukong is just he feels like playing this more safe game because he can always hide behind his clones, always sending only one of them in. And it's not that bad if one or two still standings get triggered only at the start because he has to fight his 5 Orcs basically in the deck and maybe one or two Ryus and just put a lot of pressure on Luke, which is way easier to do than punching through the clones and hoping to draw one of your two still standings. So yeah, I would say it's a really even matchup, but I would prefer playing the Wukong side just because he's more consistent. But on the other hand, as Luke, you can definitely just really feel invincible at some point if you take some reuse or take some infinite strikes and are just like, ha, you did nothing. It's also really cool. Although I don't like Luke that much. Um, so yeah, try it out yourself. Also tell me in the comments if you tried it. What were your experiences with this matchup? And then I'll see you next time. The next poll is up. A bit late, of course, just because the whole mic died thing. So yeah, until next time. Bye bye.